Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about 10 strategies that you can use to search for and identify small businesses that are currently for sale in your target area. I'll also give you some practical tips and techniques as how to best use and select these strategies to get the most effective and efficient outcome. Most people watching this video will fall into two main categories. There'll be those who have already done a lot of research and are committed and determined to buy a business, so are at that stage where they're seriously starting to look and they want to know how they can do that best. And they're looking for ways that they can identify more quickly the type of businesses that are available and that they would want to buy. The second group are earlier in their process of buying a business. It may be somewhat theoretical to them, and they're trying to learn as much as they can so that when the time comes, they're better positioned to be successful in their search for business. Either way, I'm sure you'll find these various tips very helpful, and I should say that once we go through them, stay to the end, because I will be giving a bonus tip which I honestly believe may turn out to be one of the most successful of all. So what's the first channel, what's the first medium you can use to find a business for sale? Well, I think obviously there are professionals called business brokers. Slightly up the value, they may be called merger and acquisition specialists. But basically they're individuals and firms who exclusively look for businesses that they can list to sell, and of course then they look for buyers to buy those businesses. The only challenge when you're the buyer, unless you're actually reaching out to them for a specific business that they have listed, some of them would politely like to speak to you because they want to qualify you for that particular listing, or maybe another one that they're working on, but generally speaking, they don't like to spend too much time with just business owners who are looking in general. And the reason for that, and I can explain from my own experience as a business broker many years ago, if you put one business listing up for sale in a public forum of some kind, then you might get as many 300 inquiries, depending on the size of the business. Now, if it's a higher value, industry specific, multi-million dollar business, maybe you won't get hundreds of inquiries. But if it's a smaller size business, you'll definitely get, if it's attractive and in certain niche areas, you get more potential buyers or people who identify themselves as potential buyers than you could ever deal with in process. Now, over the years, the specialist brokers in these niche areas may keep those contact details, because the next time they have a listing, they might reach out to you. But it's a slow process, and you've got to remember from the broker's point of view. And again, it does depend by the specific broker, specific legislation under which they operate, in different circumstances in different markets. But generally speaking, as most brokers get paid a commission for successfully selling a business, they don't generally want to spend a lot of time with potential buyers, because in theory, and you'll see when we go through the list, it's actually quite difficult often to identify the specific business for the specific buyer. So that's why they focus in on getting the businesses listed and then finding the buyers for them. And in that way, they could spend an awful lot of time very, very quickly for no benefit, talking to hundreds and hundreds of buyers who are looking for many different types of businesses, rather than buyers who are specifically interested in the business that they have for sale. To give that some thought, and we'll probably talk about business brokers again in another video. The second, best way, and again, these are not in a particular order, but I guess I've ranked them somewhat. The second one I would say is obviously online business directories. Clearly the one you can do the most easy, and most of them are free to access, to look at. Some may be paid, and you can only see the listings, exclusively. But you'll figure out which ones are the right ones for you. Start with the free ones. One of the best and the biggest is Biz Buy Sell. It operates in numerous markets around the world, and they're also good for research on businesses that have bought and sold in the market in general. That's important because there isn't a lot of information available the market for buying and selling small businesses in every country that I'm aware of is what we would refer to as an inefficient market, in the sense that because there isn't a central collection of data, and the closest we can get to is something like Biz Buy Sell, but it's far from comprehensive. There's not knowledge shared, not everyone else in the marketplace the way you would in, for example, the stock market, where everybody knows the price and knows the public information about a company. That's not something that applies to small businesses, and there could be buyers and sellers on two sides of the same city who may not be aware of each other's existence, depending on what channels they're using and how they're being communicated. Bear in mind that most sellers have a great need for discretion and privacy and confidentiality. So again, they're not generally shouting from the rooftops, and therefore other potential buyers may not know, or other potential sellers may not know there's another business in their industry for sale, 5 miles away, 10 miles away, or 50 miles away. So that's where the work and experience of a business broker comes in, and we've already talked about that. But equally, so Biz Buy Sell and those other directories are obviously somewhere I would be very surprised if you haven't already looked at, and then you'll figure out what information is available. Some of them, especially franchise businesses, for example, they may be more publicly because there are the business is a franchise as opposed to the person as a business, as is often the case with very small independent businesses. So they may be more willing to disclose exactly the brand and maybe even the location of what particular store it is. But often what's described is kept anonymous. So it may be a general industry, a general size, some general financial data. Almost none of them will obviously give full financial data. They'll give an indication perhaps. And then, of course, when you contact them, whether it's a broker that's posted that listing or whether it's the owner themselves or some other representative, they're going to screen you to see if you are someone who's serious enough to be considered to be brought forward. If they do, they'll offer you to sign a non-disclosure agreement that just ensures legally that you are taking on the responsibility to keep the information that's shared with you confidential within yourself and those who need to know, and maybe some professional advisors like your lawyer or your accountant or financial advisors. So, but they generally don't want everyone to know everything about the business that's for sale. So, but it's a good place to start, the Biz Buy Sell and other online channels. Again, depending on your jurisdiction, I happen to be in Canada, where and in Ontario in particular, where those who are licensed to sell businesses are also under the same license as those that are licensed to sell real estate, whether that be residential or commercial real estate, as well as leasing, etc. So it's, again, I did have that license many years ago when I first came to Canada. And it's the same in many parts of the United States as well. I'm not sure about other countries. So in this case, the real estate agents can list businesses for sale. Again, they tend to be the smaller ones. And some of those, the same as the Biz Buy Sell, if it's not a problem to list the type of business and some other details, then they may well put it on what's called the multiple listing service, the MLS. And that's the databases that you can access, again, publicly online these days. In the past, it was exclusively you had to have access to the MLS, so you usually needed to have a real estate agent or a broker do the searching for you. Nowadays, it's not as much. The information is more publicly available. That is initially generated from the multiple listing service. So real estate agents can be, or the multiple listing service can be, a good place to identify businesses that might fit your criteria. The other, the fourth one is other professionals. So, for example, particularly accountants, lawyers, and other professionals. So we're talking here about people who serve small business owners in different ways. So that could be a business coach, a business advisor, someone like myself who does business exit advisory work, where I help people get their businesses prepared for selling in the future. someone like, if you reach out to me, I may happen to know there's a business coming up, for example, but we don't do it as our primary job. And that's the same with accountants and, of course, lawyers. Not all lawyers deal with the purchase and sale of small business, but they may know a client who's indicated to them they're maybe doing their estate planning or something. And the same with accountants, the clients might let them know. And in some cases, if they know you're looking to buy, they may put you in touch with their client. Again, on a case-by-case basis. Now, there are some lawyers and accountancy firms who may also, again, depending on the legislation and the regulations where they operate, they may be allowed to run advisory businesses that do more than just their core profession, or they may even be licensed or permitted to do intermediary services. So they're effectively acting similarly to a business broker. So that's obviously can be a good thing, but again, the same as with some of the other things, we'll say it depends. Many times accountants and lawyers, for example, they may not feel comfortable communicating about the willingness of a client to sell. They may not be willing to identify to you, even though you're another client of theirs, that they have another client who's looking to buy or sell. But sometimes they will, and again, if you let them know what you're looking for, if it's someone you already have a relationship, then they may be, and many often they will, if they have a client who's looking to buy and they have a client who's looking to sell, or they know of one, then of course often they will be willing to put you together, sometimes for a fee and sometimes just as a professional favour, as it were. Now, the other thing, of course, depending on the type of business you're looking for, and if it's in a particular industry, there may well be, and there certainly will be, trade and industry websites and membership sites and various places where people within an industry connect. Sometimes they have classified areas. It used to be in the old days in of course, printed. But these days they sometimes have confidential member areas where there may be places where people within that industry can indicate that they're actually interested in selling or they're interested in buying a business, and there'll be ways of communicating with each other that you may be able to take that conversation on further from there. The sixth avenue is the general public, and when I say that, I mean friends and family, personal and professional contacts, not necessarily the ones I've mentioned. You know, who think of professions where people get chatty with their clients. The barber shop is one that I think we all agree, and maybe the hairdressing salon. The people are always talking. Sometimes there's things they can talk freely about, sometimes not. So we obviously want to be discreet. So, but still, they might know of someone. That's true of like your dentist or who knows what. They may have another dentist that's looking to sell if you happen to ask them. So within your current contact base, again, depending on how public you want to be, you might want to let them know, hey, you know what, I've really enjoyed being in this industry, or I've got an interest in this industry, or you know that I've been a professional in this industry for the last 10, 20 years, and I think it's time I set out on my own and I'd be interested in buying a business. So that's always a good thing. The more people who know, as long as you're sensible and professional, as I'm sure you would be, then it can be a benefit. Of course, at other times it could be a detriment. So you've got to use your own judgment on that. This is one that people don't often think about, but former colleagues or even employers, someone's worked for an employer, maybe outgrown the business, maybe they were in the trades, for example, as a young apprentice, and then 10 years later, they were grateful for the opportunity that business owner gave them. 10, 20 years later even, they may think back to that owner and approach them knowing that they're getting ready for retirement and ask them, hey, do you happen to be interested in selling the business perhaps? But also, do you have a friend who's in the industry who you know is ready to retire, or maybe they've got some health issues? I'm at this stage of my life where I'd like to be a business owner like you, and I wonder if you could, keep an ear out for me. And often they will, obviously. They may be thinking, hey, you were a great young professional. They know the quality of your professional attitude, your work ethic, and they have a friend who's looking to sell. So they may just put you together. You never know, right? You don't ask if you don't get if you don't ask. The next one, again, is LinkedIn. Now, again, not suitable for everyone, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve. And in case of searching for a business, I would say there's three ways that come to mind that you could use it. You could just do a basic raw research using the free services of LinkedIn to identify, people by job title, for example. So business owners, or you can look for people that of specific companies that you may be aware of, and you might learn more information about them. You may also be able to reach out to them that way. You may also be able to learn more about where they're at. You may see posts they've liked, or posts that they've actually commented on, or even post themselves that indicate perhaps that they're thinking about retirement, or they're selling their business one day, and that might be a good time to look out and reach to them. Or they've commented on someone else's, and that might indicate that a connection of theirs is in that stage of their life and might be looking to sell their business. Now, obviously, if you use the LinkedIn premium features, you get a better ability to identify different business types, to be able to reach out to more people. So again, for $100 or less a month, I'm sure it's actually less. But so let's say for 3 months you pay for the premium and you do all the research you need to do, then that could be an effective method of identifying and searching for businesses that you can do from your home office. If you want to publicly let it be known that you're looking to acquire a business on LinkedIn, again, you can just post and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a business in this area, in this industry, with these general criteria." Some people would never think of doing that and wouldn't want to. Others say, "Hey, why not? I'm interested. People know I'm interested. I think I'm serious. I've got the backing I need. I've got the experience I need, and I'm just looking for the right business to come along." And you might post something like that and get discreetly people reaching out to you that could be business owners. Of course, it could be their representative, could be a business broker who's saying, "Hey, you know what, I can't go public on this, but I do have a client who's listing with me, and let's talk." If you want to do it more privately, of course, you can use again some of the advantages of LinkedIn to discreetly reach out to people. Again, it could be business brokers, it could be accountants, it could be lawyers, it could be business owners, and just let them know, "Hey, I hope you don't mind me approaching you, but I am looking for a business." And people, I don't think, will be offended by that. They'll either, especially if you've done it through LinkedIn, you've done it appropriately, you've followed the rules, I don't see why they would be negative in any way. They would just say, "No, I don't have anything, not something I do, don't have anything that's of interest to you right now." Then we've got our friends at Facebook, the Facebook groups. Now, Facebook, as we know, can be a great business tool, like LinkedIn, in a different way for certain business types and for certain demographics. It's actually a lot of people in the age group where you think business owners might be looking to sell. So the sort of baby boomers and the late Gen X, or the early Gen X, I guess it would be. But people in that demographic who may be at an age where you think they might be considering selling a business, that's actually the one of the largest cohort of people using Facebook these days. And then it depends how you use Facebook, of course. And obviously there's lots of different groups. I'm a member of one or two, don't spend a lot of time there. But they are small business groups, and the quality of them varies enormously. A lot of them are very, very micro small businesses, and some of them are a little bit bigger. So again, if you choose selectively, what I would say, if you're going to use something like that, become a member of the group if you're permitted to, and be a member of the group for a little while, so a few weeks or a few months, so that you get a feel for that group and what type of requests and conversations are taking place. Some of them you pay for, some of them are free, some of them are extremely high quality. But again, the advantage of that, perhaps even more so than LinkedIn in some cases, is that often the people that you may be communicating with are the business owners themselves, and they are extremely difficult to reach often. So if they are identifying themselves as business owners, they're in this Facebook group, and there's questions going back and forward, it may be that you can get to them as a business owner in a direct communication, and whereas you may have been much more difficult to do through any other means. So again, you have to be patient. There's work to be done, but you could be fortunate and find the opportunities you're looking for there. Now, we're at number 9, and obviously that's pay someone else to do the search for you. So that could be a business broker. Like I say, a lot of business brokers just won't entertain a general buyer because sometimes the legislation don't let them charge for that type of service. They can only get paid on commissions. That certainly was the case in Canada when I was a broker. There's certain restrictions on it. But either which way, they may not want to. But there are some who may want to. That might be part of the service that they own, that they offer, sorry. And they are more than willing to do it, or they may do it for a fee. Anyway, there's no harm in asking, and you'll find out. And the other way, of course, is just if you don't have the time or you don't have the expertise to do some of the things I've suggested above using technology, you might get a tech-savvy online researcher who, you give them a brief and they will come back to you with, a list of X amount of businesses that they have identified using the various online tools and, based on the criteria that you've given them. The number 10 is you approach the business owners directly. Now, we've talked about various ways that may be possible in the list above. Now, obviously, ideally, if you already know the business is for sale, if it's already been identified, usually through a business broker or an online directory or something similar, someone's reached the point where they're ready to put their business on the market and have gone ahead and done so. I should point out that the vast majority of businesses never get to market. Even the business owners that say they will sell or they need to sell or they want to sell in the near or distant future, for various reasons that I can talk about another time, they don't ever get around to doing so. So it could be that many of these business owners are thinking about it, but they do tend to think about it and procrastinate. And there are lots of reasons why a business owner who they're conflicted often, and they don't know when, they don't know how, and they don't know what the business is worth. There's a lot of things they don't know, and I have great admiration for business owners, but that is just a fact. And or they may not think their business is sellable, or they may think that they could sell at any time, and so they keep putting off the opportunity or the activities required to prepare and actively get their business ready to put on the market and do so. So approaching a business owner directly might be the best option sometimes. Now, I have personal experience of that. I've had I in the last 20 years I've owned a total of 6 small businesses, each of which I acquired, either built or bought, and then grew and improved and eventually sold. So I've sold businesses just about every way you can, from someone walking in the door, which I don't know if was ever successful, but certainly I had a few reasonable direct approaches. I've used business brokers, and some of them were franchise businesses, so I used the franchisor to connect me with people who had approached them about franchise available in their area. And so I've sold those 6 businesses in different ways. Some of them were independent businesses. I generally used a business broker, but it depends. Or I've let one know that, hey, I don't want to go full listing right now, but I am interested in being approached by buyers. So how would you approach business owners directly? Well, again, we talked about some of them. You could do mass email blasts if you can find the data, and of course sometimes the data is available. The rules and regulations in different countries may prohibit getting access, but sometimes there's paid directories you can purchase that will give you the email addresses, sometimes through various organizations like the Chamber of Commerce or the local business development. Again, within reason, they may be willing to share some of that information if they're permitted to, and other ones you can pay for. So one way or the other, you can get that information, and maybe, and I would be obviously strategic and targeted, send emails out to those industries or those businesses that fit the criteria you're looking for in the area you're looking for. So that's more mass, if you like, and then you could do very targeted. Now, if you're going to do targeted, of course, you could do a good old-fashioned snail mail, a good old-fashioned letter in the mail, because generally we don't get so much mail as we used to get, and sometimes a letter that comes in that's not a bill, it's not a receipt or an invoice, may get the attention. If you do it that way, you might have a pre-printed letter. If you can get the business owner's name, that always helps. But even if you don't, if you handwrite the envelope or use some printing system that looks like a handwritten letter with private and confidential on it, it's much more likely to get in front of the owner. And that plays on nicely to the last of them, which is to actually walk into a business. And I don't think I've ever done it, but certainly I know people who have, and of course different salespeople do. But some people are willing to do it, and often that's, it's bold, but there's nothing wrong with it in theory, as long as you're polite and professional. If they're not interested, then you would leave. But if you're very targeted, if you know the industry you want to buy a business in, and you know the area, then yeah, you could walk in and just, obviously one would not declare. And I've had people do this. People say, "Hey, I want to buy this business." Whoa. No, I can tell you one thing: they will never buy that business, and they probably won't buy anyone's business with that approach. But if they go in and just ask for the owner, and the owner's not there, the owner is there, they can just say, "Hey, can I have a private chat?" Sometimes it works. And if the owner's not there, again, if you have a letter sealed, explain to the owner why you were there, with private and confidential in it, because their staff are going to say, "Hey, there was someone here looking for you earlier and they left this envelope." There's a good chance that envelope will get opened and will get read. Sometimes when that's happened to me, I've been unimpressed, disinterested 90% of the time, but occasionally it's caught my mind, or I've kept the letter, and so even when I wasn't ready to sell. So yes, it can be effective. And if the timing's right, it might just work. And of course, if it does, if you do happen to get to talk to the owner, he or she is in the right demographic, or they're in the right, state of mind, it could be that you've met them face to face, and first impressions, right? So I wouldn't make it my primary strategy. It's very time consuming. But if you're in a very particular area and you have a very particular industry in mind, and you're determined to find a business that you can buy, then I wouldn't necessarily rule it out completely. Now, I promise to have, before I say anything else, that remember, none of the techniques I've mentioned are perfect. Some of them are a bit rough and ready, but that's just the way it is. And I did have more I was going to add about the fragmented nature of the market, but I did mention it, that it is difficult. That a very good business will sell. A well-prepared, stable and established business with good cash flow will generally sell, as long as the price is reasonable. There's plenty of buyers out there. That's the other thing you've got to be mindful. There are plenty of buyers out there, so you've got to be strategic in identifying your targets and presenting yourself well. So none of the techniques I've mentioned are perfect, but they each work in different ways and to different degrees. So choose wisely, and I would suggest use a combination. But here's the bonus tip. Because buying and selling, negotiating a business can be very stressful. Sometimes there can be an adversarial atmosphere at times, certainly in the early stages when the potential buyer's asking for information and they want answers to this question and they want answers to that question. And the business owners, who, let's remember, very rarely have gone through this process before, they're inexperienced, they may not appreciate the questions. They should, and if they're guided by a professional broker or someone, a business exit advisor like myself, they should be ready for the questions that are coming. But they can sometimes feel like, oh, these people are just wasting my time, or they're just asking me these questions so they can reduce the price. And on the other side, the buyer can sometimes say, why has this person not got all this information to hand, and why are they being hesitant? And it may be that they just don't have the data up to date as much as they would like, or for whatever reason, they're focused on running the business. But it's very common that the information that each party wants, or the questions and answers each party wants, aren't as readily available as they would like. So sometimes there can be a bit of a negative atmosphere. If you can just try and be mindful of, as a buyer, the tip is this: if you can be mindful that the seller is going through something that's unprecedented for them. Now, that may be true of you too. You may be looking to put your life savings in a dream of buying a business. But the same in reverse is true of the seller. And the seller is often in two minds about selling for various reasons. They're also worried about making such a big financial decision, as are you, and making a mistake. They're worried that the person buying from them or indicating they would like to buy, maybe just, you know, fishing for information that they're going to use to set up a competing business. There's many you know, emotional thoughts that go through. They may be a little bit stubborn, they may be a bit set in their way, and they're not used to answering to someone else or answering someone else's questions to that degree. They may have run the businesses in ways that you know, understated some of the profits, and they're sensitive about how they disclose that information. There's many things that may have been going through their head that are not necessarily red flags. And if you can just be a little bit more empathetic, just be a little bit aware, you don't have to be a fool. I mean, you should get all your questions answered. You should get all of that. But when it comes down to the you know, the negotiations, if you've shown an element of understanding. Don't forget, the business owner's worried for themselves, of course, but they're worried for their business, that they're selling it to the right person. But they're also sometimes worried for their staff. Their staff may even include some family members. So they want to make sure that they don't make a mistake. So if you can be somewhat patient, or explain the reasoning for your questions, or just be a little bit more patient, you may find that when it comes down to the negotiations, whether it makes a difference in price or not, it may make you the preferred buyer. And at the end of the day, if your goal is to successfully buy a business, just using this little tip to just be a little bit more patient, to maybe present yourself a little bit differently to some of the other buyers who may have come along, and you know, you're not just a number cruncher. You're someone who really is, you know, cares about buying the business and cares about taking the business forward. Then the business owner may recognize that. They may want their legacy, they may want their staff, they may want the business with, you know, that they've run for 20, 30, 40 years to be in good hands. And if you can convey that by your approach to the transaction, then it just might make the difference between a success and failure. And trust me, I've been, again, in that situation. I've had two buyers. One just was, in fact, it's not even, and this will give you a perfect example. In some cases, the owner will go for the buyer who is not necessarily offering them the best financial deal. Now, obviously, there's other terms and conditions in any deal, so there's other factors concerned, but sometimes owners will forgo that extra dollar for a better feeling about the person they're selling the business to, and I can say that from personal experience. Hopefully you found this video useful and thought-provoking. If you did, then obviously I'd be grateful if you put a like and subscribed and get more of the videos I'll be producing and I have already produced. And of course, if you've got any questions, love to hear them. Love to see comments in the section below. So please do that and click on the next video and we'll see what we're talking about next. Thanks.